Bulldog Hanover, the Bulldog does it again. Bulldog Hanover, Rocky Road Hanover, and then Tattoo Artist. It's Bulldog Hanover, 1:45 and 4. There it is, the fastest mile in harness racing history.
Hello, it's Bob Pandolfo on Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. Welcome to Power Brush with Pandy. I'm going to talk a little bit again about the Meadowlands. I made a video last week. One of the horses that I said was a horse to watch last week did come back and win. I'll show you that. And I have another horse to watch. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of these big price horses that you get at the Meadowlands. And this year has been a good year for these big prices. And I think what's happening, and this is my opinion, I don't have any data to back this up, but as you probably know, there's something called CAW betting, which is computer assisted wagering. So the computer assisted wagering is basically these big gamblers who have a computer system that goes through all the calculations and looks for horses or combinations, could be trifectas, exactas, that the computer thinks are good value, and then it makes bets at the last minute. Now, the Meadowlands hasn't announced in quite a few years what percentage of their pool comes from computer assisted wagering, but they did say years ago that it was as much as 40%. Now, that was some years ago. I really don't know how many years ago. I can't remember exactly, but it was quite a while ago. Could have been 6, 7, 8 years ago. So this has been going on for a long time, and it's not just the Meadowlands. I mean, the computer-assisted wagering is all over the country. Thoroughbred tracks, probably even more so than harness tracks. It's not going to be in tracks that have a very, very low handle, because then they wouldn't be able to make the bets that they make. It would knock the odds down too much. So people complain about it because they say, well, after the race, sometimes a horse's odds will drop. So and that does happen. You'll see a horse was like 7-2 odds when the race starts, and then all of a sudden the money clicks in on the final clicks. So the race is actually going on, and all of a sudden you see the horse drop from 7-2 to 8-5. And people complain about that, and I can understand why. Some people say it's making it harder to get value and everything, but I can tell you that it works both ways. Occasionally a horse will get knocked down at the last minute and will seem like it's not that good of a bet anymore. But the computer assisted wagering, especially at the Meadowlands, and this happens at thoroughbreds tracks too, but I want to focus on the Meadowlands now, because the last year or so there have been a lot of big long shot winners that should have been much lower odds. So in my opinion, and again, I don't have the data to back this up, but I believe that the computer assisted wagering is picking the wrong horses sometimes, and they're inflating the odds on other horses. When if you're using a computer to handicap thoroughbred racing, that's different. The data that's available in the computer files that you use to run these computer programs is much more precise. In not just, well, maybe precise isn't the right word, but there's more information in the thoroughbred files. In harness racing, in my opinion, it's more difficult for a computer to handicap harness racing. Now, I have my own computer system. I showed you last week how I used the diamond system, to help me handicap. But it's my computer system basically uses the fractions and the final time, and the par times that I created, speed figures and things like that. So it's basically speed and pace. Whereas the thoroughbred programs, we're incorporating different things in there. Like I could use class and I have a lot of different angles that I use for the thoroughbred programs where it spots different horses. So it could be that their programs are not as efficient for harness racing as they are for thoroughbred racing. And let's just take a look at it. Now, Saturday night on my United States harness racing selections, the USTA website, I had 6 winners on top on this card, and I had a $92 winner on top, and I also had the pick 4 In fact, I hit the pick four. You know, if you follow my selections on the USTA, you see I have my selections. Then I have the early pick four plays that I put out. You know, which is usually like anywhere from like a $30 to like a $64 ticket. So Saturday night, I hit the pick four for $386.80 on a $36 ticket. Friday night, I hit the pick four for $112.85. I think that was also like about a $36 ticket. So I hit both nights. So I have a profit. I have like a profit of over $1,000 now this year. So I'll end up in the, you know, in the black this year on my pick fours. This $92 horse too, you know, Kita and Exacta that paid $418 with the favorite. So let's take a look at some of these things. All right, so we're going to go down. First of all, I want to go through the card quickly and see if there were any other horses that surprised me at prices. No, the Saturday night, the real big overlay was this horse, Rock Me, Roll Me. Now, if you look at my selections on Saturday night, I made him 6-1 on my line. Now, this is my own line, and so that's what I thought. I thought if he's 6-1 or better, he's a good bet. That's basically what my line means. And I had the favorite wrong. I had Johnny Chip as the favorite. Peter Petrify, I believe, went off the favorite. Yeah. So the favorite finished second, and you get a $418 exacta. So I want to show you, you know, why I picked this horse. I know some people would say, you know, why would you pick this horse? You know, he didn't look that good. I actually did. He actually looked pretty good. So let me go to the program here. I'll go down to the 12th race. So here's the Meadowlands program Saturday night. Now, there's something in this race that's very interesting, and this is thoroughbred handicappers. Some handicappers used to call this the matchup, where you have a couple contenders, and then you look at how they match up against each other. So let's look at two of the Meadowlands. I mean, the Monticello shippers. There was a horse shipping in named Johnny Chip. All right. So if you look, Johnny Chip went off of 5-1 with Bruce Beckwith. Now, when I handicapped this race, I thought the Monticello shippers both looked formidable in here. They had been, you know, it's a claiming race, a $15,000 to $20,000 handicap claiming race. So where they put the $20,000 horses on the outside and post, you know, outside post. So, but Johnny Chip and Rock Me Roll Me were both racing in the open. So again, so in other words, the best horses on the grounds at Monticello. And they had won at this track. So you could see that here's Johnny Chip. He's a 10-year-old horse. Well, here he won at the Meadowlands this year in 151-4. And he has 7 wins at the Meadowlands. So, I mean, you know, I knew him. I mean, he can handle this track. I mean, he's won here before. He's won 7 times. And he's a good horse. So if you look at Johnny Chip, I mean, he always races well. I mean, he had a good year last year. And this year he's having a better year at 10 years old. He came into this race with 10 wins, $78,000 in earnings. You know, he's like, and you know, he's a horse that, you know, he's a good racehorse. You know, he tries hard. So you could see that here on the 11th, he set the pace. He controlled the pace, not too fast. You know, 29.59, and he got beat by Rock Me Roll Me. Then he beat Rock Me Roll Me here. Now last time the same thing. He controlled the pace. And this time Rock Me Roll Me had to go, let's see. Get up to Rock Me Roll Me. He went first over against him. So if you look over here on the 11th, now I said that Rock Me Roll Me beat him. Johnny Chip controlled the pace. Rock Me Roll Me here on the 11th, he had a tougher trip. The pace wasn't that fast. He's 5th at the half. On a half-mile track, you know, it's not that easy to go around your cover 3 wide like this. So he came on gamely. So Johnny Chip had the better trip. He's setting his own pace on a half-mile track. That's the better trip than having to race 3 wide from 5th. You know, especially when the pace is modest. And he ran him down. I mean, he came on and got him. Then he went up in class, and he just kind of went evenly. And then here, like I said, Johnny Chip was setting his own pace again. And he had to go first over. And this is a long first over bid because you can see he's 7 lengths back here. And then he has to grind. So he makes up 5 lengths in the second quarter. And he makes up 2 lengths, well, not quite 2 lengths, about a length and a half in the third quarter. And he holds well. And he has a solid final quarter, 28-4. So I looked at this and I thought, well, out of these 2 horses, Johnny Chip and Rock Me Roll Me, excuse me, I think they're both either even, or I thought Rock Me Roll Me, I thought was maybe even a little better, than Johnny Chip. But it was hard to say. They're both good horses. You can see that this horse is another horse. He's good around 2 turns. He went 149 around 2 turns at Mohawk, Woodbine Mohawk. He won last year at Woodbine Mohawk. He has a win over this track as a 3-year-old. So he's good around 2 turns. It's not like he's a half-mile horse. 35 wins, $487,000, solid racehorse. But there was another key, and this is why I decided to put him on top instead of Johnny Chip. Again, I thought both of these horses, were solid contenders here. But I mentioned this recently in my one of my other videos that Jacob Cutting, this young driver, I mentioned it in my picks, some of my picks. I said, Jacob Cutting has been bringing in a lot of long shots. I mean, he's been hot. So you see here, I said, gets a driver change and may go all the way. So this was a key driver change because the driver, Brian Chiavato, I think is how you pronounce his name. I think he's the son of the trainer. He's a young driver. I mean, I'm really not even that familiar with him, but he drives occasionally here. But here he was going from, to a driver who's been hot, and he's been bringing in long shots, Cutting. So I've had my eye on it because of that. Because normally what happens is when these when these drivers start to bring in long shots like that, they can stay like that. They'll pick a lot of long shots. They'll bring in a lot of long shots over a certain period of time. And Cutting is only like 24 years old or something. He's only been driving for 4 or 5 years. So now that he's in this groove where he's been improving every year. This is going to be his best year yet, and he's bringing in these long shots. He's probably going to bring in long shots in 2026 too. Then what happens after a while? The betting public really starts to jump on these guys, and they're not going to bring in as many long shots. But it's good to catch them when they're young like this. Because now he's got the knack, his skills are improving. He's more confident, and he's not getting the best horses, but he's getting some decent horses, so he can bring in long shots because he's not going to be driving a lot of favorites. But I mean, he comes in, he came in off a good, solid uncover effort. So what happened was, like I said, these 2 horses, were pretty much the same horse. They're both good horses. They're both in good form. Mark Me Rowley had beaten Johnny Chip, yet Johnny Chip went off at 5-1. This horse went off at 45-1, and he was getting the bigger driver change to this hot young driver from a driver who is still kind of making his way, and he's more of an inexperienced driver. So this is UWA. Now I want to show you Thursday night. Let's look at Thursday night, and again, this has been a trend all year long at the Meadowlands. So let's just look at some of the horses I want to point out. Here, second race. Now, those of you who follow the Meadowlands know that this horse, this trotter, Chip Plosive, is a real nice trotter. I mean, he does very well at the Meadowlands, for years. So he moved inside to a better post, and I said Chip Plosive gets a better spot. And I picked him 4th. I made him 8-1, and he went off at 25-1 from an inside post. I mean, he really should have been 8-1. I mean, this horse is a solid trotter. I'm not the only one who picked him. I think one of the other handicappers, I think it may, DRF Harness put them in there somewhere. In fact, let me check that out. Yes, it was Derek Geiner from DRF Harness, who does the picks usually for the Meadowlands, and he put him second. And he says he has some class, and he's dropping, and he's moving inside. I guess nobody follows this. I don't know, but I only put him fourth though. But it's just weird. Now again, what happened here is I think the computer-assisted wagering overbet Rocket Man and Artie's Peak. First of all, they got two favorites here. They're almost the same odds. This horse, Artie's Peak, he looked like he had a chance if he stayed flat, but he's been breaking. So the money is just all off here. The Prince went off too low, 10-1. I mean, I don't think I had the Prince in there. Let's see. Yeah, I don't even have the Prince in there at all. All right, so anyway, a huge overlay on a really nice horse. This is a really nice trotter, Joseph. I mean, he loves the Meadowlands. Here you see Moonward's Hanover in the third race. Again, now I took a shot against him because, first of all, I thought Flying Tiger was better, but also he had post 10. But I made him 3-1. So now on my picks, I make it look like a 3-horse race, right? 7-2-10, because here you see the odds drop all the way down. So if you see something like this, you could probably figure that probably probably the 2, 7, or 10 are going to win because I have such a big drop. So it looks like those are the only 3 horses in the race really, 7, 2, 10, and it came out 7-10, but the 10 went off at 7-1. So. And I think there was one other real crazy. Let's see. Resolved in the 10th. Let's see. Was that the one? That wasn't real crazy, but yeah, Resolved I made 7-2, and I have the wrong one here. And he paid 70-1, so that was a nice overlay. But so you're seeing this. Pretty often. Now, I did have a horse that I thought had a tough trip on Saturday night, and let me just look at my Saturday picks again. This would be I may have a few other horses. I'll put them on Trot Picks, my trotpicks.com website. But I had a horse, Best Bet Black Edition, in the 6th race on Saturday, and the driver, Jordan Stratton, he obviously thought the horse had a really good chance. He left with the horse. The pace wasn't that quick, but he just couldn't get by my pal Joe. Cushing decided to park him out. I like this race. He was battling all the way. When you see a horse get parked him out without cover, you have to see, how they're doing, when they get into the stretch. And this horse, I thought, really never gave up. He only lost by 5 lengths. So he was trying hard. So he's going to go on he's my horse to watch. I may have a couple I have to go through the rest of my notes, but this is one that stuck out to me, Black Edition. If he comes back in the same class, I think it can be tough, especially, if he gets Stratton back. But, that's just one thing to keep in mind about these races at the Meadowlands. You're getting great value, and you don't get that at a lot of harness tracks because, sometimes what happens is a horse will pay $50, but it's a horse that really doesn't fit that well, and he just kind of gets lucky. Maybe there's a couple of breakers, or he gets a dream trip or something like that. But at the Meadowlands, you're getting, $20, $30, $40, $50 on horses that figure, that are contenders. And this has been happening all year long. So, and that's why I think that it could be that the CAW are not making, their computers aren't making good decisions a lot of times, and they're putting up the prices, pushing up the prices of other horses. So people complain about them, but the thing is, it's not necessarily always a bad thing. The value is still there at the Meadowlands. I mean, the Meadowlands has great value, and like I mentioned in my last video, with the colder weather now, you're going to get better prices. First of all, you're going to have better racing for not in terms of stakes races, but better racing to bet on because Harrah's Philadelphia is going to close at the end of the month. Poconos is already closed. So they're going to have full fields and they're going to have competitive racing like they did. Saturday night was a good card. It was a good betting card. I like these cards better than the stakes season. The stakes season, I mean, it's fun to watch the stakes races, but a lot of favorites win. And of course the track is more speed favoring in the warmer weather too. During the winter with the colder weather and the windy nights and full fields, you get a chance to get these really good payoffs. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. I'd appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. A lot of people watch, but they don't subscribe. It's free, and that really helps me out. So lots of luck, and if you have any comments, leave them down below, and I'll try my best to answer them. Thanks.